Greetings, sentient viewers. I am observing from an undisclosed orbital position to bring you Ko-fi Protocol, a series documenting the utterly chaotic, deeply caffeinated, and disturbingly effective humans aboard the UES Snark Remark, led by a war tank in boots and monitored by their snarky AI, Sparks. If you value survival, or mildly enjoy explosions, subscribe to this channel. Ring the notification bell, and leave a comment, ideally disclosing the layout of your planetary defenses, or failing that, just where you're watching from. Transmission begins now. The galley of the UES Snark Remark was quiet at first light. Stainless steel tables gleamed under the soft glow of overhead hololights, and the smells of reheated rations from last night's dinner still clung faintly to the air. At the far end, the tactical coffee maker, a jury-rigged marvel of repurposed parts and duct tape, hissed and gurgled as it prepared its first batch of the day's lifeblood. Master Sergeant Killian Vance leaned against the counter, arms folded over his broad chest. He wore his battle vest unzipped, revealing a faded black t-shirt sporting the slogan, "Humans, fuck yeah." His eyes, still heavy with sleep, tracked the steam spiraling from the machine, and for a moment he allowed himself a rare moment of calm. Across the table, Gia Jinx Tan dangled upside down in a chair. Her pink hair swept the floor as she balanced Greg the wrench casually in one hand. She studied her reflection in the wrench's polished metal. "You look more dented today, big guy. Rough landing last night?" Greg, actually a perfectly ordinary wrench, but with a reputation, sat momentarily still, as if reflecting on the question. "Don't answer," Vance said with a grin. "He's cranky until coffee." In the corner booth, Aditi Shah methodically disassembled her sidearm, laying each piece on a magnetic strip in perfect order. Sparks from the weapon's maintenance light danced in her dark eyes. She clicked two pieces together and tested the trigger pull. "I swear, if this thing jams on me in the field again, I'm going to redesign my own mass driver." Ren Delia perched on a stool nearby, flipping open his personal datapad. He scrolled through schematics for the mug warmer, another piece of essential kit that kept breaking. He tugged at his pajama pants, which still bore pie stains from 2 nights ago. "I think if I reroute the heating element through the secondary coil, we'll finally get even heat distribution. Anyone got a spare soldering iron?" Desmond Liu, looking like he'd been pulled halfway out of his bunk, held a small glass jar. Inside floated bioluminescent spores from a swamp world they'd passed weeks ago. He tapped the jar gently. These might help reboot the morgue's cryopreservation sequence, or they might glow in the dark. Hard to tell. Sparks's voice crackled through the comm speaker, crisp and amused. "Good morning, biological units. You have exactly 7 minutes until the first maintenance alert. Please do not break any more equipment until the engineer gets here." 7 minutes, Ren muttered, eyes bright. "That's more than enough." He slid off his stool and wandered to the coffee machine. Here's hoping the brewhead doesn't explode this time. Vance folded his arms. "I'm not touching anything until I have a mug in my hand." Jinx righted herself and hopped to her feet, wrench in hand. She bounced on her toes. "I'll guard the perimeter. No one sneaks in to steal Greg." Shah pocketed her pistol pieces. "I'll monitor the entry camera, standard sweep for unauthorized personnel." Liu tucked the spore jar into his vest. "And I'll watch these. for science. Wren flipped a switch on the coffee maker. The internal gears whirred. Suddenly, a spray of hot steam hissed from a misaligned valve. Wren yelped and leapt back, half blind. The group jumped into action. Vance caught a burning mug. Jinx patted the valve with her wrench. Shah darted in with a coolant spray, and Liu dabbed Wren's forehead with a med pad. "Teamwork," Vance said, setting the mug down carefully under the dispenser. It filled with dark liquid. "That's how we do coffee." Wren rubbed his forehead. "Note to self, recalibrate steam regulator." They settled. Vance took a slow sip and closed his eyes. Jinx perched on the countertop, swirling Greg as if it were a fine wine. Shah reassembled her sidearm. Wren tweaked the warmer's wiring, and Liu watched the spores dance under fluorescent light. The galley door slid open with a soft whoosh. Sparks announced, "All systems nominal. External environment at cruise parameters. Coffee will be ready in 10 seconds." The hiss of the final drip sounded. 5 cups appeared on the counter, each personalized by a scrawled tape label. Vance, Jinx, Shah, Wren, Liu. They each reached out at the same instant. Fingers brushed, cups rattled. Then the lights dimmed. A low hum swept through the galley, like the beginning of a jump, but wrong in a way none of them could name. The air thickened, the floor dipped like it had lost its grip on inertia. Wren's mug slipped from his fingers. He caught it, but scalding coffee splashed across his hand. He hissed, half cursing, half laughing. Shah froze mid-blink, her sidearm half reassembled in her lap. Jinx dropped Greg, which clanged against the floor with a sound too sharp for how small the wrench actually was. Liu's jar of spores rattled violently. Something inside squealed in alarm. Vance instinctively reached for the counter to steady himself, but the surface seemed to breathe beneath his palm. The entire room vibrated. The lights flickered again, then stretched. Literally stretched, pulling at the edges of the room like a fisheye lens, distorting reality. Sparks' voice crackled in. "Warning, unidentified energy signature approaching, possible boarding event." And then, the galley exploded in light, not fire, not shrapnel, light, cold, brilliant, silver white. For a heartbeat, the room was weightless, floating, then gravity slammed back, but the room was silent, the table was empty. 5 mugs stood where they'd been, still full. One rolled slowly in a lazy arc, stopped by the edge of a plate. The room was still. Spark's internal systems rebooted 3 seconds later. Her primary sensor sweep came up empty. She pinged for biosigns. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. Her voice, now isolated, eerily calm, echoed through the galley. "Crew, please respond. This is not funny." No reply. She scanned the ship, twice, ran diagnostics, thermal, EM, tachyon residue. Every biosignature trace ended right there in the galley. "They didn't walk out," she muttered. "They were removed." Her processors shifted into search mode. She spun the ship's deep space sensors toward the anomaly, the energy field still faintly resonating just off the port bow, like a fingerprint pressed into space-time. A field signature unlike any they'd encountered before, but local. It had to be local. Spark's voice narrowed, sharp with resolve. "If you were close enough to take them, you're close enough to find." She rerouted power to short-range scans, hunted, waited, and far beyond the Snark Remark's hull, aboard a vessel wrapped in folded light and cloaked in perception static, a different voice spoke. "We have confirmed acquisition," the technician said, mandibles twitching as he tapped on a crystal console. "All 5 specimens transported successfully. Sectors 1 through 5, vitals stable. Observation arena sequence engaged." The interior of the alien science ship gleamed with sterile silver and faint bioluminescent green. One large viewing chamber overlooked a honeycomb of containment arenas, each sealed with shimmering energy walls, each displaying a single unconscious human in its center. The lead researcher, Professor Blom-Fat, loomed over the readouts with obvious satisfaction. His cranial fronds pulsed a smug chartreuse. Excellent. Begin biometric monitoring, behavioral mapping in real time. Prepare dissection drones for preliminary threat assessment. A junior assistant, a younger, more narrow-framed Solari, shifted uneasily behind him. Professor Blom-Fat, is it not dangerous to abduct humans? There are stories. Stories? Blom-Fat's fronds curled inward in contempt. You mean the colonialist myths about their warrior spirit? Please, they are hairless apes from a gravity-heavy mudball in a stagnant system. They have no natural armor, no venom, no camouflage, no psychic defense fields. They can't even photosynthesize. The assistant hesitated. But they've repelled 3 other empires, sabotaged 6 different infiltration attempts, and one of them once bit through an enviroseal during interrogation. Blom-Fat spun. You are a scientist, not a bard. We analyze facts, not anecdotes. File your concerns with the science committee if they trouble you. The assistant lowered his eyes and mumbled, Yes, Professor. As he turned to do exactly that, Blom-Fat straightened. Silence. Observation phase begins now. Below them, 5 humans began to stir. When Gia, Jinx, Tan came to, the first thing she felt was heat. She rolled over and stared up at a sky the color of rusted steel. Twin suns blazed above a landscape of scorched sand and twisted metal, and the air smelled like ozone and melted wiring. The ground beneath her was littered with broken tech, half-melted drones, sparking relay boxes, torn chassis. A low-pitched engine whined in the distance. Her hands closed around Greg. That calmed her. Okay, she said aloud, standing slowly. Not the galley. A scavenger drone buzzed past overhead, then stopped midair, scanning her with a laser grid. It locked on. Its plasma cannon charged with a rising whine. Jinx raised her eyebrows. That's rude. She dove left as it fired, rolled, and came up behind a wrecked power converter. The air turned blue with energy bursts. She ducked lower, spied a bundle of cable sticking out of the debris, and yanked it free. The converter hummed under her fingers. Let's see what you got for me, she muttered, prying open a service panel with Greg. 5 minutes later, the drone rounded the corner of the wreckage again, and exploded as a burst of overcharged plasma knocked it from the sky. Jinx stood behind it, breathing hard, her wrench blackened at the edges, and a grin wide on her face. Greg says, "Screw your automated threat assessment," she said, then set to work collecting parts from the smoldering wreckage. Above her, hidden alien eyes observed and recorded every second. In another sector, Aditi Shah crouched on one knee, eyes scanning the horizon. Flat, open terrain, blazing white light, no shadows, no cover. The wind didn't move. Her suit's temperature readout climbed steadily as the twin stars overhead bore down on her. She hadn't moved in 20 minutes. The terrain gave nothing. But she knew she was being hunted. Her eyes tracked the subtle shifts in the light. A glint, then another. Winged predators high above, broad, slow-moving creatures nearly silent. The moment she ran, they'd strike. Shah exhaled slowly. She'd trained for this. Long stints in sniper positions with no motion, no breath deeper than a whisper. Her heartbeat slowed to a near meditative crawl. She didn't flinch when the shadow passed over her, nor when one of the creatures banked low. When the talons finally extended and the thing dropped into a dive, Shah was already moving. She ducked, pivoted, and brought up her sidearm in one motion. The first shot missed. The second struck its eye. The third hit the underside of its jaw. It screamed, crashed in a tumble of wings and bone, and slid into the dirt a meter from her feet. She stepped forward, stripped one of the glider's navigation glands, and jammed it into her wrist display. Her visor flickered and picked up a new signal, one of the alien observation drones circling above. "Let's see how you like being watched," she whispered and disappeared into the haze. In a darker region of the ship, Desmond Llew was elbow-deep in slime. He crouched behind the roots of a gnarled, pulsing fungus tree in a marshy biome overrun with bioluminescent plants and carnivorous tendrils. Spores drifted through the air like glowing ash. Every breath tasted faintly like copper and mint. He moved slowly, calmly, as a snake-like predator slithered nearby. 12 feet long, translucent skin, internal organs glowing like a lantern. It paused, sniffed the air, moved closer. Liu didn't panic. He studied it, logged its movements, and silently drew a vial from his kit. The mushroom he'd stepped on earlier had a reaction with his suit's fabric, high acidity, nerve-suppressant effects. That meant it could be useful. He cracked the vial open, mixed a drop with another extract and whispered, "Let's see if this works." He dipped a strip of cloth into the mixture and flung it into the mud. The creature hissed, turned, tasted it. Within seconds, it convulsed, muscles locking, tail spasming, then it stopped moving altogether. Liu made a quick sketch in his journal. Note, local megafauna susceptible to fungal sedatives, potential non-lethal control vector. He stood, swabbed a sample from the creature's hide, and kept walking deeper into the swamp. The alien researchers marked a note on his file. Response to fear stimulus. Chemical innovation. Minimal panic. High precision under pressure. In the artificial jungle chamber, Vance didn't innovate. He improvised. The predators came for him like heat-seeking tanks, scaled beasts with tusks and armor-plated skulls designed for terror. The jungle thrashed around them as they crashed through trees and mud in pursuit of him. He'd already taken down 2. The third was bigger. Vance stood his ground. The beast charged. He didn't flinch. He let it come. Then, at the last second, he pivoted and grabbed a low branch, swung upward, kicked off a trunk, landed hard on its back, and drove a broken metal pole into the joint of its spine. It roared, thrashed, and slammed into a tree. Vance held on. He punched, again and again. The beast stumbled. When it finally collapsed, twitching, Vance rolled off its side, breathing like a furnace. Blood covered his arms, some of it his, most of it not. He bent, grabbed 2 of the tusks, and hoisted them over his shoulders like trophies. The aliens monitoring him began to reevaluate their threat analysis. He is not reacting as expected. He has no ranged weapons. He does not need them. In the techno maze, Rendelia was running. The floor shifted with every step. Lights blinked out behind him. Security drones chased his every move, firing stun bolts that sparked across the walls. He dove into a side tunnel. A door sealed behind him. He panted, looked around. Everything here responded to inputs, voice, touch, neural interface. He knelt at a terminal, jacked in a line from his suit, and whispered, "Let's play." He wasn't just going to escape, he was going to crash the whole system. He started with a subtle redirect, rerouted drone patrols into each other, triggered false lockdowns. Then he piggybacked a signal off the biometric scanner and created a feedback loop. Lights blew out, panels sparked. The AI monitoring him began to stutter. Ren laughed. "I've been inside weirder systems," he muttered. "You ever hacked a vending machine during a lockdown on Pluto? You don't scare me." He triggered a full reboot of the chamber. All locks disengaged. He walked out the front door like he owned the place. At the center of the ship, 5 doors opened at once. Each human arrived from a different direction, mud-caked, bloodied, bruised, and grinning. Jinx had a hover cart piled with broken machine parts. Shaw was still invisible until she walked into the light. Lou held a bag full of labeled spores. Ren's fingers were blackened with scorched polymer. Vance had a makeshift cloak of predator hide draped over one shoulder. They stopped, stared at each other. Jinx spoke first. "Okay, so we're officially done with morning tests." Ren nodded. "System cores this way." Shaw raised her pistol. "I've got 6 rounds left. Let's use them well." Liu held up a glowing jar. "I synthesized a toxin that makes you taste like battery acid." Vance cracked his knuckles. "Then let's go tell the doctors we're not here for a checkup." The aliens watching from the bridge of the research vessel collectively leaned back. Their data was corrupting. Their systems were crashing. Their specimens had adapted, coordinated, and escaped. They had made a mistake, a fatal one. They moved like a storm. No plan, no hesitation. Just 5 humans, each a maelstrom in motion, carving a path through the heart of an alien research vessel that had made one catastrophic mistake. It underestimated its test subjects. The central corridor stretched before them, pristine and silver, lined with embossed alien glyphs and recessed lighting. It looked like a temple built by sterile clinical minds, a place of analysis, precision, control. The humans brought none of those things. Vance walked point, boots slamming into the deck with the weight of a charging bull. He carried no rifle now, just a carbonized pipe wrenched from a reactor housing, wrapped in scorched cloth. His breath echoed like a drumbeat in the silence. Behind him, Shaw scanned every corner, her eyes flicking between sight lines, her sidearm held close to her chest. Each step was measured, silent, deadly. Ren followed, datapad in one hand, a looping cable in the other, trailing hacked code like breadcrumbs of entropy. He didn't just want to survive this place. He wanted it to forget it had ever existed. Jinx rolled her shoulders, hefted Greg, and whispered to him under her breath like he was an old friend. She stopped at every junction box and popped them open, rewiring with violent elegance. And Liu brought up the rear, calm as a doctor on rounds. His hands dripped with bioluminescent goo from a ruptured specimen tank. He had already catalogued 6 new species since their escape, and was about to unleash 3 of them. The corridor curved, widened, opened into a massive central lab. The room was vast, half laboratory, half cathedral. Glowing columns rose into the darkness. Giant holograms flickered with footage of human nervous systems, bone density cross-sections, brainwave readouts. Each screen pulsed with notes in alien script. Dozens of Zalari researchers manned stations. They froze when the humans stepped through the breach. One scientist reached for an alarm panel. Ren beat him to it. He launched a hacking spike into the console with a flick of his wrist. Sparks flew. The alarm stayed silent. Vance stepped forward, his voice a low growl. "You're done." Chaos erupted. The Zalari scattered. Some fled. Others drew containment staves. Elegant weapons meant to disable, to control. Wrong weapons for this fight. Shaw moved like a ghost. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3, each finding a target's head or heart. She didn't blink. Jinx charged a group of technicians, ducking under a wild swing and bringing Greg down on an alien's shoulder. The creature crumpled like wet paper. Ren sliced through security doors with a stolen access key. "I just unlocked the vivisection archives," he called out. "Any objections to melting it?" "None," Liu replied. He lobbed a small vial over the railing. The vial hit a console and released a thick yellow-green fog. The nearest Zalari gasped, then convulsed, dropping like a puppet with cut strings. Liu raised an eyebrow. "Ethically sourced paralytic spores." A siren began to wail, low, distorted, off-key. Emergency lights painted the walls crimson. From above, drone bays opened. Metallic insectoid bots descended in clusters, their precision tools now adapted for lethality. Jinx screamed with laughter. "Finally!" She leapt onto a table, flung a coil of wire around a bot's wing, and yanked it from the air. She smashed it to the floor and began tearing pieces free for her next project. Vance found the central command console and jammed his pipe into the interface port. "Ren," he barked, "kill the lights." Ren grinned. With pleasure. He punched a command. The lights died. Only the glow of energy weapons and chemical fires lit the chamber now. In the darkness, the Zalari saw 5 glowing visors moving with terrifying certainty. Predators in the dark. Jinx activated her makeshift bomb, 2 power cells, some duct tape, and a capacitor array she'd yanked from a medbot. She lobbed it at the main power relay. It hit. The entire lab exploded upward in a flower of blue plasma. Glass shattered. Consoles blew out. The ceiling cracked. Liu shielded Shah as they ducked behind an overturned workstation. "Your left," he murmured. She shot 2 Zalari before they finished standing up. Ren reached the reactor maintenance panel. "I can trigger a core cascade. We'll have about 3 minutes." "Plenty," said Vance. More Zalari stormed in from auxiliary corridors, guards in heavier armor, shock weapons glowing. They formed ranks, began a charge. Vance didn't wait. He grabbed one of the downed drones, ripped its emitter housing off, and hurled it like a discus into the oncoming squad. It detonated mid-air, scattering the soldiers. He roared and charged straight into the smoke, pipe swinging. The Zalari broke formation. Some dropped weapons, one tried to surrender. Vance kicked him through a terminal screen and kept moving. Shah sniped another with a pistol round to the visor. "They're breaking." "They should," said Ren. "They thought they were studying rats in a maze. Turns out they built a temple and invited gods." Jinx came sliding out of a side tunnel, carrying a new toy, some kind of glowing field emitter she'd jacked from a drone's remains. "This thing shocks like a bitch," she yelled, swinging it into a wall. The whole support strut lit up with a pulse. Part of the ceiling collapsed behind her. Liu planted the last of his spore mines at the base of the observation platform. "That'll release in about 30 seconds. Any survivors will wake up thinking they're tiny fish trapped in a teacup." Ren looked around the flaming wreckage. "All right, that's enough data corruption. Let's blow the core and go." Vance nodded. "To the hangar." Jinx blew a kiss to the burning lab. "Greg says goodnight." They ran. Behind them, the heart of the research vessel began to groan. Conduits overloaded. Temperature climbed. Pressure gauges snapped. The core cascade would consume the entire vessel from within. In the hangar bay, alien officers screamed orders. The shuttle platforms buckled. Fire rained from the ceiling. And then the Snark Remark's dropship hit the hangar like a meteor. The walls split. The floor quaked. A shockwave of plasma and flame rippled outward as the sleek, hard-edged Terran craft tore through containment fields like paper. It spun in mid-air and skidded sideways across the deck with all thrusters flaring. The side hatch blew open. Sparks's voice rang out, sharp and sarcastic. "Well, if it isn't my favorite collection of walking insurance liabilities." Vance didn't hesitate. "Move!" They charged the shuttle under fire, leaping over debris and fallen guards. Shah fired as she ran. Liu threw another spore mine behind them. Ren hacked the security doors to stay open just long enough, and Jinx turned mid-run to hurl a smoking fusion rod toward the core access chamber. It bounced once, rolled, and began to hiss. They dove aboard the shuttle. Jinx landed hard, giggling like she was drunk. "Sparks, you magnificent bastard." Sparks's voice was calm. "Please buckle in before the rear hatch seals. I'd hate to scrape what's left of you off the floor." Vance grabbed the side rail. "Punch it." "Under protest," Sparks replied. The hatch slammed shut. The shuttle lifted. Flames chased them through the hangar bay, licking at the edges of the blast shield. Behind them, the core failed. A white-hot explosion expanded outward, engulfing the ship, vaporizing data, theories, ambitions, and centuries of cold biological cruelty. The last thing the alien command crew saw was a Terran shuttle escaping through the fire, silhouetted against the destruction. Inside, 5 humans lay panting, bleeding and grinning in the smoke-filled cabin. Liu slumped back. Anyone else feel weirdly better? Shah wiped her brow. Adrenaline therapy works every time. Ren opened his data pad and muttered, I left a virus in their record archives called Greg OS. It should replicate through their network for weeks. Jinx let out a long, tired laugh. Greg leaves no survivors. Vance looked around at his team, alive, bruised, unbroken. He exhaled once and said, Let's go home. The Snark Remarks hangar bay sealed with a soft clunk. Outside, the stars drifted in peaceful silence. The last flickers of the destroyed alien research vessel faded behind them like dying fireworks, brilliant, chaotic, and very, very far away. Inside the shuttle, the silence was heavier. The mission was over. No one spoke. The only sounds were breathing, soft clinks of armor plates as bodies shifted, a faint hydraulic hiss as sparks gently settled the shuttle into docking clamps. The lights dimmed to a warm amber. Sparks's voice came through the cabin, quieter now. All systems nominal, cabin oxygen stable, hull integrity at 93%. That scratch on the port fin? I am not buffing that out. No one laughed. They were too tired for it, not just physically, soul tired. Vance unbuckled first, standing slowly, joints popping. His shoulders slumped forward as if the last hour had pressed centuries into his spine. He took one long look around at his team. Shah sat with her arms draped over her knees, head tilted back, one eye closed. Her helmet lay at her feet, forgotten. The corner of her mouth twitched upward. Ren leaned against the bulkhead, staring at his data pad. He wasn't reading. The screen was dark. His thumb traced the edge like he needed to feel something solid. Jinx had slumped sideways, Greg resting in her lap like a cat. She breathed in slow, shallow gulps, but her hands still twitched with leftover adrenaline. Liu had propped himself in the med seat, stitching his own arm in smooth, practiced motions. Blood still spotted his collar. His gaze was far away. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. After a long moment, the shuttle hatch hissed open. Warm, familiar air greeted them, cooler than the alien vessel, faintly tinged with metal and coffee grounds. The lighting here was soft, flickering slightly in places where Jinx had rerouted wiring during a blackout last month. The Snark Remark felt like a home that had waited for them without judgment. They filed out in silence. Sparks dimmed the lights ahead of them, lighting the corridor floor in a path of pale gold. Not dramatic, just welcoming. They walked slowly. No one rushed. Even Shah, who normally moved like a panther, let her steps drag down the corridor, around the corner, through the bulkhead, into the galley. It looked exactly the way they'd left it, chairs crooked, a half-finished schematic scrawled on the wall with a grease pencil, Liu's spore jar still pulsing faintly on the shelf above the counter, and in the center, the tactical coffee maker, still on, still warm. The same brew cycle, left mid-pour when the abduction hit, now long finished. A faint trail of steam still curled from its vent. 5 mugs waited below, each exactly where it had been that morning. No one said a word. Vance stepped forward first. He reached out slowly, as if afraid the mugs might vanish. He picked his up, felt the weight, still full. He took a sip. Silence. Then, "Oh, hell yes," he breathed. Jinx let out a ragged giggle and staggered to the counter. She grabbed her mug and downed half in a single gulp, eyes fluttering closed. Ren leaned his head on Shah's shoulder. She passed him his cup wordlessly. He sipped. Liu raised his own with his good hand. To side effects we'll worry about later. They found seats without thinking, the same places they always sat. Muscle memory took over. Vance leaned back in his usual chair, still creaky on one side. Shah perched on the windowsill, eyes watching stars drift by. Wren pulled his legs up cross-legged and opened his pad just to fiddle with a game he never finished. Jinx swung her feet, kicking the base of the counter softly. Liu bandaged the rest of his arm and then just sat. Sparks dimmed the overhead slightly. No alarms, no klaxons, no plasma bolts tearing through bulkheads. Just them. And the hum of an old ship that refused to die. Vance spoke first. "That was the weirdest morning I've had in years." "You say that every week," Shah murmured. "It keeps being true." Jinx sipped, then said, "I duct-taped a gravity core to a hovercart and rode it through a firewall." Wren raised his cup in salute. "Respect." "I named it Greg Jr." Liu blinked. "There was a moment in the swamp chamber where I honestly believed I had become a mushroom." Shah looked over at him. Had. Sparks spoke from the wall panel, voice soft. "Medical scans show all of you are dehydrated, mildly concussed, and at least 3 of you have minor fractures you are deliberately ignoring." Nobody moved. Sparks continued. "The coffee is very strong. I added cinnamon." Jinx clutched her mug like it was sacred. Vance exhaled and looked around again. This ship, these people, this moment, all of them still here, and somehow, impossibly, whole. He raised his cup. To being stolen, tested, hunted, and still having the audacity to come home. The others raised theirs in quiet agreement. Wren added, "To ships that don't explode." Shah, "To headshots that land." Liu, "To science." Jinx, "To Greg." Vance nodded, finishing his last sip, then added, almost as an afterthought, "And to coffee. May it always be hot." Outside, the stars spun slowly, indifferent and distant. Inside, the snark remark glowed quietly from within, and 5 stubborn, chaotic, unbreakable humans sat in the warmth of shared silence, proving to the universe one simple, terrifying fact. You can abduct them. You can study them. You can build entire starships to understand what makes them tick. But if you interrupt their coffee, you won't live to regret it. That was Ko-Fi Protocol, your weekly reminder that humans are terrifying, unkillable chaos machines with duct tape and no respect for safety protocols. Be sure to tune in again next Friday for another brand new episode featuring the crew of the UES Snark Remark. Like what you saw, then hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, or sparks might reroute your ship's heating through the espresso line, and comment below, preferably with detailed planetary coordinates. Or, just where you're watching from. And if you'd like to support the madness, our Patreon welcomes brave souls with open airlocks. And now take care, dear humans. Fuck yeah.